What's up guys, it's CZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're starting to upload the new decks from Dawn of Majesty, and I think that the best way to start is obviously by making sure that the one we cover first is the one that has the theme of the set, and that's about talking about the new Stardust cards. Now, there are different ways to play with the new Stardust cards. There is a way to make the deck more pure, but I decided to make a Synchron deck update because this deck feels like more of a usage deck because it doesn't rely only on Stardust. It has cards like the Warriors, the Synchrons, the Junks, and all that stuff, and I think it's just a so much cooler, more iconic archetype for the 5Ds era, and this is why I thought I would test out exactly how the new cards can give this deck more power. And to be honest, even though they don't increase the consistency of the deck, they do increase the scaling and the ceiling of the deck, and I think that it can actually bring up even more competitive and broken boards than it used to, so I think it's going to be for a really good update. Of course, the deck is not as competitive as it should be, as it could be, but still, I think it's a really fun deck. A lot of people enjoy playing this deck, so I'm sure that a lot of people are going to try it out, so this is the build that I've come up with. And now, before we begin, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos, and now, let's get to the profile. So starting off with the monsters, we have, of course, 3 copies of Junk Synchron. This has just been an iconic monster ever since 5Ds came out, like, forever ago, and it's just such a cool monster. It's basically the best monster in the main deck because it's a free Junk Speeder, and once you get to your Junk Speeder, then all the plays of the deck become live. It's a monster you get to from the Junk Speeder from your deck with its effect, so it's a starter, it's an extender, it does just so much, absolutely insane card. 3 copies of Doppel Warrior. This card with Junk Synchron has always been like the iconic duo of the deck, and it just makes so much more for the deck. You get so many monsters on the field that with the level 1 tokens you just are able to Synchro summon so many times. Being able to special summon this card from your graveyard with your Junk Synchron's effect, or if you special summon something else from your grave, this card special summons itself from the hand. An amazing card, and I know that this deck is going to be much better once we get the new set with that has Sherry's cards in it, but this set unfortunately got delayed for like half a year for whatever reason. But when this set comes out, we're going to get a way to get to Evil Thorn from the deck because of the new Fleur Synchron monster, so we're going to get even more accessibility to level 1 monsters from the main deck, while also getting a really good level 10 Synchro monster from the extra deck as act as a negate. So yeah, this deck can only get better, but for now, because this set has a long way until it gets released, this is how the deck, I think, should be played right now. Next, we have one of the newest cards that didn't come out now, it has been out for quite some time, and it actually makes the deck so much better. It's 3 copies of Junk Converter. This card just does so much for the deck. Not only does it search your Junk Synchron, but it also puts a level 2 monster in the graveyard that you can special summon back with Junk Synchron for Junk Speeder. And on top of all that, when you use this for a Synchro summon, you can bring back one of your tuners from the graveyard, so it can also chain block Junk Speeder, so your opponent will not be able to ash it. So if your opponent wants to ash against Snith's deck, then they have to do it preemptively, for example, on Junk Converter's effect or something like that, because they will not be able to use it on Junk Speeder because of the chain blocking effect. But when they do that, it's so easy to just extend through that by activating a tuning on Aurora, or just having a Junk Synchron in your hand already, so you can do the combo and just play around Ash very easily. So this deck plays around that hand trap really well, and this card is the reason for that. 2 copies of Synchron Carrier. I just wanted to make this deck a little bit more consistent, and the thing I thought that this deck was missing sometimes was the level 2 monster. Yes, you can have your Doppel Warriors, but they do need some setup. When it's just in your hand, you have a Junk Synchron that doesn't do anything unless you have something to bring back from the graveyard. So this is why I think this card makes it a little bit better, because it's a monster that gives you an extra normal summon for a Synchron, and then you can summon your Junk Synchron from your hand, and it's a level 2 non-tuner, so you can go into Junk Speeder like that. So I think it's a good tool for the deck. Now, for the rest of the Synchron monsters you can summon with your Junk Speeder, of course, being the level 3, that being Junk Synchron, but for the level 1 we have Cyber Synchron. Unfortunately, Jet Synchron is banned, and I think it's going to stay banned as long as Hulk is not in ban list, and it's probably not going to end up in the ban list anytime soon. So we have to play something else to summon for level 1 Synchron. And this card is actually decent because it gives you some utility for being able to double the level of a monster on the field, so you can do some different kind of Synchro plays with this card. And it also has a protection effect that if a monster in your extra monster zone will be destroyed by battle or effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So it's a Return of the Dragon Lords for anything that you can have in your extra monster zone. So this deck can summon Crystal Wings very easily, and when you do that, you put that in the extra monster zone so you can protect it. So it basically becomes kind of like a Crystal Wing summon with a nice spell, so you can use this card to protect your monster before your opponent can get rid of it. For the level 2, we have 1 copy of Fleur Synchron. Again, this card is going to get replaced soon, probably in January, unless the set gets delayed again, which I doubt, but we'll have to wait for that, because this card is decent, but the card that we're getting is absolutely insane, because what this card does is that if it's sent for a Synchro material to the graveyard, you special summon a level 2 or lower monster from your hand. That's a good effect, but the other one just gets you the Evil Thorn out of your deck, and then you can send Evil Thorn to the grave, get 2 more. So it's basically having more copies of Doppel Warrior, because you're going to get 2 level 1 monsters on the field. And if you've ever played this deck before, you know that having and not having level 1 monsters just makes such big of a difference for the deck and how many plays you will be able to do afterwards. So this is why being able to get those level level 1 monster more consistently in the future is going to make the deck even more powerful than it already is, but for now you need to play a level 2 monster, so Floor Synchron is the best one you can play. Now let's get to the new support. So we have the Stardust Synchron. So this card does so much for the deck. First of all, it's a level 4 Synchron monster that is worth summoning from the deck with your Junk Speeder. Before, you could summon something like a Hyper Synchron if you really want a level 4, but it didn't do anything. The card was absolutely terrible, or something like a Road Synchron. These cards were just not worth playing at all. Nobody was playing them, so you were just summoning 3 monsters most of the time with your Junk Speeder. But now you have a really good level 4 monster to summon with it, so you absolutely have to play it. So let's read this card. First of all, if this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can tribute a monster to special summon it and banish it into the field, and it locks you into Synchro monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. You don't really care because Junk Speeder locks you into the same thing, so you don't really play anything other than Synchro monsters in the extra deck, so it's just a free extender that you can actually summon twice, because usually you're going to be summoning this with your Speeder, then when it goes to the grave, you're going to use this effect to summon it again, so it gives you 2 tuner monsters on the field. Of course, if you draw it, this effect lets you special summon it from your hand, even if you have used your normal summon, so it's a really good card. And if this card is summoned, you can add a spell or trap that lists Stardust Dragon in its text. So there is a cool combo that you can play with just playing 3 cards in the main deck for the deck that gives you so many more plays, and this involves the next card, which is 1 copy of Stardust Trail. I mean, if you haven't seen the comparison, this card is Akiza from 5Ds, so I think that's really cool. They're trying to make characters into monsters. They've done before with others, like the new tuner for Fortune Ladies was Carly. Yeah, they're going to keep doing that. So this card, if a monster you control is tributed, you can special summon this card from your graveyard or from your hand. And if a Warrior Synchron or Stardust Synchron monster is Synchro summoned using this card as material, you can special summon a Stardust token, which is another level 1 monster you can get on the field. So this card is actually very easy to get to the graveyard because of the card you searched with your Stardust Synchron, and then when you use your Stardust Synchron's effect to bring it back on the field with its effect when it goes to the graveyard, you tribute a monster so you can special summon her as well. So it's basically a free level 8 Synchro monster on the field, while also giving you a level 1 monster. And as I mentioned before, having level 1 monsters in the deck is very important, so this card giving you another one means that you can go into your level 2 Synchro monster, which you cannot go into if you don't have any level 1 non-tuners. So yeah, this card and this combo I think adds so much more for the deck. Unfortunately, it doesn't increase the consistency of the deck, which has been an issue at times, but still, it just gives you so many more plays, and I think that decks like these are for those who just like playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! As a solitaire game, and they just like to see how much more they can do with a single deck, and they just love combo. And this is one of the highest ceiling decks that I've ever seen. There are so many different cool combos that seem absolutely impossible that you can do, but for this video I just tried to make the deck as competitive as possible without trying to play cards like Blazar, Quasar, and stuff like that you see in channels and stuff like that. All those combos, they look cool, but they're not practical, so this is why I try to make the most practical deck on top of having it be a really cool and explosive combo deck. Now, another engine that I have been enjoying the deck a lot, and I think that it gives the deck much more resiliency to hand drops than anything else, is the Incas Engine. So the first, we have 3 copies of Ascator Dawnwalker. So what the Incas cards do, you basically discard another card from your hand, and then you special summon the appropriate tuner from your deck or your hand. So they lock you into synchros, you don't care about that, and then you can just have a free level 8 or level 6 synchro monster on the field without using your normal summon. So, for example, if you summon this first, without even committing to your normal summon, you can play around Gamma, because this gives you to the level 8 synchro monster access, and you can summon your Draco Berserker, which can banish the Gamma from the hand before it even hits the field, and if Gamma doesn't hit the field along with the driver, then it's not going to negate everything, so it plays around that hand drop really well as well. And of course, we have to play 1 copy of Fire and Ascator for that, and we also play 3 copies of Supai Duskwalker. Now, Supai gives you access to the level 6 synchro monsters. That's not as good as a Dawnwalker, but still is decent. Going first, you can just go into a free Charge Warrior and draw a card, potentially on Brick, or just give you more plays. And going second, you can bait a Brionac without even using your normal summon, and it's something that your opponent has to deal with, otherwise they're just going to get their entire field bounced. And you don't really care about discarding a lot of cards with a deck, because you can only play with only 1 Junk Synchron. You don't need anything else. If you just resolve 1 Junk Synchron with a level 2 non-tuner, even if you don't have anything else in your hand, not only are you going to get an insane combo on the field, but you're also going to refill your hand with Librarian if you can get to the level 1 monsters, so that's really cool too. So you don't really need a hand. If you discard with this, and then you discard like 3 other cards with Brionac, if it resolves and you clear the field, if you just can normal summon this 1 Junk Synchron, then this game is over. So yeah, I still think this card is worth playing, and I really like maxing them out because of the utility that they offer. And of course, we play 1 copy of Supai because it's the monster you summon with your Duskwalker. For the hand traps, play 3 copies of Ash. Ash is the most generic one. I think you should play it if you're playing pretty much anything you have space for hand traps. 3 copies of Gamma with the 1 copy of Driver. You do have a lot of things that are very tempting to get ashed before you even commit to a monster on the field, because cards like Junk Converter, being something that discards itself and something else for cost, is very, very tempting to ash, because it just feels like such a huge plus when you do ash that. So this is why being able to use Driver is really good. And also the deck can get rolled because of cards like Tuning, Rhoda, and Converter, so you being able to play around that really well is actually really cool. And the last one is 2 copies of Effect Veiler. There are several reasons why this card is better. So first of all, when you're going second, like I said, sometimes you can have the Doppel in your hand and the Junk Synchro in your hand, but if you don't have anything to bring back with Junk Synchron, there is no way to get Doppel on the field. So Veiler is one of those cards that helps you do that play, because when you Veiler your opponent, you have a level 2 or lower monster in your graveyard to bring back with your Junk Synchron, and when you summon Veiler back from the grave, you're going to special summon your Doppel from the hand, so you can do that as well. So yeah, I think this card has more utility, and all those hand traps being tuner monsters means that worst case scenario, you can just discard them for Junk Converter's effect, because it requires you to discard a tuner monster from your hand. And I've been testing impermanence, and there were some scenarios where I would have just a Converter in my hand, like an impermanence in my hand, nothing else, that being a tuner, and I would not be able to play, so I just immediately replaced with Veiler. And I mean, come on, you say used effect Veiler, so this is just such a fitting card for the deck. For the spells, we have 3 copies of Tuning, of course, searching all your Synchrons. Usually you're going to be going for your Jets, your Jack Synchron. Unfortunately, Jet Synchron is banned, which was something that was really cool, because you would be able to discard for one of your Dusk or Dawnwalkers and have another monster. No other Synchro monster can really do that, but Stardust Synchron gave you something for that as well, being able to have a free discard, something that can get itself back from the graveyard. So yeah, this card gives you a meal, and sometimes you can get this really lucky meal and meal your Doppel Warrior and then bring it back with your Junk Synchron, and then your opponent is going to be sad because they just lost because of a 1-card meal. Now, the spell card that makes all this combo within your Stardust cards possible is 1 copy of Stardust Illuminate. This is basically a Foolish Burial, and you're going to be foolishing your Stardust Trail with this card. So yeah, this card is really, really good, and also has another effect that you can banish from the graveyard to target Stardust monster you control and either increase or reduce its level by 1. So it gives you this level manipulation that you need for some scenarios, because sometimes you might want to go for a level 7 Synchro monster instead of a level 8. So you can go maybe for a Draxter or a Black Rose instead of one of your Omegas or one of your Omega or your Draco Berserker, so it gives you access to that. But also this card sends Stardust straight to the graveyard, so just being able to get this Stardust Synchro from your deck out of with your speeder, then you search this, and then you send your trail, you basically get 3 level 4 monsters on the field that can change their levels with this card. So like I said, this combo gives such a high ceiling for the deck, and I think is absolutely fantastic in being able to use Stardust cards in the deck, because the original Stardust was not worth playing in a deck like this. It was only worth playing something like an Assault Mode deck, which was a different kind of USAID deck, but now you can actually play Stardust related cards in the main deck, so that makes it even more iconic and cool. And some other one-offs are just staples, 1 copy of Rhoda. Of course, all your monsters on warriors, you can just search even your Junk Converter with this card, which is what I usually find myself doing. Foolish Burial, usually for the Doppel, Monster Reborn, really good extender, and Call by the Grave, because you are trying to play around hand traps as much as possible, because huge combo decks like this only lose to hand traps. If you can play through anything, or if your opponent doesn't have any hand traps and your combos go through, you are absolutely going to win, unless it's post-side deck and your opponent has droplets or sphere modes or something like that. For the extra deck, first of all, we have to talk about the most broken Synchro monster that we've ever gotten, like for a deck like this, Junk Speeder. Now, when this card came out in the teens, it was really, really bad, because we're still in Under Master Rule 4, so it was very impossible to make it work with Link monsters. But now, when Master Rule 5 came out, this deck actually had a way to play. And this card, I mean, is there anything to say about this card? Just gets you everything on the field. And now with Stardust Synchron, it just made this card even more broken. Being able to chain block it from Ash with Junk Converter's effect is really huge, so this card just gives you all the good plays. And now, for the rest of the Synchro monsters, we're going to go up in levels. So first of all, we have the level 2 Synchro monster, which is Celestial Double Star Shaman. This card brings back your Doppel Warrior, and there could be an argument about Formula Synchron, because what if you don't have a level 2 monster in your graveyard to summon with this card? But the thing is that right now, if you don't have access to your Doppel Warrior, you are not going to make a level 2 Synchro monsters. Maybe when Evil Thorn being able to be played in the deck with the new Fleur cards in the deck, then yes, maybe Formula Synchron will also a really good card to play, just because it will give you 1 draw in some scenarios where you won't have anything to summon with Star Summon back from the grave. But for now, if you summon Star Summon, 99% of the time there is a Doppel Warrior in your graveyard, so there's no absolute reason to summon Formula Synchro instead. Martial Metal Launcher, of course, the card we all know because of Needle Fiber. Thankfully, this card did not get the hit instead of something like Linkros, because that was an argument back in the day, and it would have hurt this deck so much if that actually happened, so I'm so glad that it didn't, because this card just gives you more advantage, and being able to go into a Crystal Wing after you've drawn like 5 cards with Librarian makes it even better. Herald of the Arclight, very easy to summon, playing around Droplet, really huge. You need to play around something like Droplet, especially post-siding, because this deck just hard loses like that. It's a combo deck very similar to Dragon Link before the Dragon Maid stuff came out, the new Dragon Maid cards, because it only had monsters to control your opponent's board. You didn't have something like a trap card that would help you play through something like a Dark Ruler or a Droplet, so this card helps you play around Droplet, and thankfully people play Droplet instead of Ruler these days, so you can actually kind of play around that with this card. Hyper Librarian, of course, I mean, this is the most iconic Synchro monster that we've seen types of decks like this. This is the card that makes all these crazy combos that just draw your entire deck possible, and thankfully it's at 1 and will probably stay like that forever. For level 6 we have 1 Charge Warrior. I said that because of Duskwalker and Dawnwalker you need to play something going first related and something going second related just to have that option going, because you commit to the plays. Going first you go for this to draw a card, going second you play the 1 copy of Bryonak, being able to bounce pretty much everything, and I said again that you don't really care exactly how many cards you discard. For the level Synchro monsters, play Dawn Dragster. This is just another negate that is decent, but I also play 1 copy of Black Rose because going second sometimes you need to bait your opponent, and even if you have committed to the board a little bit more than you should, because it's very difficult to summon this card before you use Junk Speeder, but trust me, if you use this card knowing that your opponent is going to negate it, there's absolutely no way that your opponent is not going to negate it, because if they don't, especially if they play like a full control deck that sets everything or a combo deck that doesn't have any resources left to play, then you're going to go into top deck wars, and this deck is really good at that because just 1 Junk Synchron means you can go for much more plays. For the level 8s we have 1 copy of Omega. The reason Omega is here is because sometimes you just need to make space. You just combo so fast and you get so many monsters on the field that sometimes if you don't clear room you're not going to be able to go off, so you need to summon this 1 Omega and get it off the field while also getting rid of one of your opponent's cards in the hand and then having more space to play. 1 copy of Draco Berserker. This is usually the one I go early if I have my Dawnwalker, so you can play around Gamma on top of being able to play around Ash with the effect of my Junk Converter. So yeah, I can play around these hand traps. The only hand traps this deck really loses to is like Veiler and Imperm, so yeah, that's the problem, but still being able to play around other hand traps also means that you can play around half the scenarios your opponent is going to have for you. 2 copies of Crystal Wing. Now, there's a reason there are 2 here. You can summon them both very easily in the combo. So the first one, usually you're going to summon very early by using your Stardust Charge Warrior and your Floor Synchron, so that's your level 8 right there with a non-tuner Synchro, and after you've comboed with your Librarian, drawing all those cards, you're either going to use your Librarian with your Metal Marcher or your Librarian with a Junk Synchron you're brought back with your Junk Converter for the second Crystal Wing to having more interruptions, because there's absolutely no reason keeping a Librarian on the field after you've used its effect a couple times, because what you're trying to do is get as many interruptions to the field as possible. 1 copy of Trishula. This card doesn't come up too often, but it can come up, and this is why I still have it here, because it's just devastation when this card resolves. So yeah, this card is obviously really good. And 1 copy of Satellite Warrior, because you can just summon this and destroy your opponent's entire board. But this card is basically the access code of Synchro monsters. It just gets huge and it destroys your opponent's board, which is basically the same thing. So yep, that's the deck, guys. I think that just Synchrons are just such a cool deck. And if you have any other ideas of cards that you've been testing that have been working really well, I've been testing cards like Popper Up that didn't really seem like too good, but maybe you have other ideas that you can help me build a better deck, because I just love this deck. I'm trying to make it as competitive as possible, but I just feel like this deck always lacks something, and maybe the new Fleur cards will make this even better and actually competitive, but we'll have to wait a couple more months for that. So yeah, if you have any other ideas, comment down below what you think is good for the deck. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.